So these are the Hidizs MS2 Pro, and to put it bluntly, these are the IEMs I wish I had when I started getting into IEMs. That's because with these, you can change the tuning without having to mess with EQ. Hey there folks, my name is Norb, and I've been using the MS2 Pro for about 2 months now. I did a first reaction video when I first got them, and I'll link to that below. Quick disclosure, Hidizs sent these to me for my honest opinion, but they had zero input into the review. Also, if you have questions, hit me up in the comments and I'll answer what I can, and while you're down there, maybe hit that like button, it helps out a ton. Alright, so let's start with who these are for, and here's really my conclusion. The MS2 Pro are a dual driver IEM, one dynamic, one balanced armature, and they are ideal for anyone who wants to explore different sound signatures without buying multiple IEMs or messing with the EQ. There are 3 types of people who I think these are optimal for. First, if you're just now getting into IEMs. If you're just starting out, these are a really good choice. Second, if you're upgrading from earbuds like the Apple EarPods, this is a good transition to something better. Or number 3, if you're transitioning from headphones to IEMs. For all those cases, I think the MS2 Pro gives you a decent IEM with a lot of flexibility at just $99 or less in the US. For everyone else, the recommendation is a bit more nuanced, but in short, I like these. And here's the thing about transitioning from headphones, by the way. Your preferences in headphones don't necessarily translate one-to-one with IEMs. Factors like ear shape, insertion depth, and how sound hits your ear canal will all affect what you hear. It took me several IEMs and more than a few returns to figure out what works for me. The MS2 Pro would have saved me some time and hassle in that regard. So while these are decent IEMs in and of themselves, they are best for people who want to experiment with sound. Finally, if you like what you hear and you want to buy these for yourself, I have links to Amazon in the description. Using those links are a huge help, but as always, it doesn't affect what I say. Before I talk about sound, let's get the basics out of the way. The MS2 Pro come with the IEMs, the cable, the carrying pouch, and 6 pairs of ear tips, small, medium, and large, with both wide bore and narrow bore. I love that Hidizs included both narrow and wide bore, which changed the sound a bit. Wide bore will give you a little bit more treble above 5 kHz, and narrow bore will bring this down some and give you a little bit more bass instead. That said, Hidizs also sent me their CNMNE ear tips, which I really enjoyed, and it's pretty much what I used throughout most of my testing. In fact, if you buy the MS2 Pro, I'd recommend picking these up if you can. Isolation with all of these was pretty good. I got a good seal, but it was better on the CNMNE ear tips than it was with the default, although the default wasn't all that bad. As far as the cable is concerned, you can choose either the 3.5mm unbalanced or 4.4mm balanced cable when you buy the MS2 Pro. During my first reaction video, I called the cable fine for the price. I got a comment from someone there who completely disagreed, and you know what? I half agree with them. Using these, I do feel that the cable could be a bit more sturdy, and I do find that it tangles more than I like, but it doesn't kink up, which is something that I really look for in cables. Finally, the IEMs themselves. These look wonderful. Design is something that I think Hidizs does super well, so props to their designers. Now, I'm not a huge fan of the metal build because it gets cold and they're a little bit heavy, but overall the size is good, they're comfortable, and they look great, so no complaints. Now, let's go back to who these are for and why I think they're good for those folks. Just to make sure we're on the same page, we need to talk about the Harman tuning. The Harman target is a frequency response curve based on Harman International's research that tries to achieve a sound that most people would perceive as tonally balanced. The research behind this took a large number of listeners and came up with this benchmark, but individual preferences will vary. Your preferences may not align with that, and that's okay. Still, the reason this standard is popular is because it serves as a generally good starting point for most people in most cases. The MS2 Pro comes with tuning filters that change the sound signature, but it all sort of dances around this Harman target. In fact, here are the 3 measurements for the 3 filters as published by Hidizs. You can see that the differences start at above 1 kHz. The red filters are the default, and they are roughly tuned to the 2019 Harman target for IEMs, which means that it follows a standard developed in 2019. These standards, by the way, do change over time as population preferences change. The white filters have the same level of bass, but emphasize frequencies above 1 kHz, making them sound brighter. The black filters again have the same level of bass, but they de-emphasize frequencies above 1 kHz, making them sound warmer and more mids and bass focused. On top of that, you can mix these with different ear tips and get even more bass or treble depending on your preferences, or how you feel that day. The red filters sound good with just about everything, and it's the one that I think brings out the best of the MS2 Pro, while the black I think is perfect for more relaxing music. The white is too sharp for my ears in most cases, though I think that it worked really well for classical music, especially violins. Keep in mind, what sounds bright to me might sound perfect to you. This is why measurements matter, but ultimately you need to trust your own ears, and that's where these are strong. They allow you to try all these out. An important note though is that I don't see the tuning filters for sale on the Hidizs website, so be careful about where you place them and make sure that you don't change the filters anywhere you might easily drop and lose them because, oh man. They're easy to drop. Now, when it comes to the technical performance, since these have multiple tuning options, I'm going to focus mostly on the things that they have in common across all the filters. As I mentioned, this is a dual driver IEM, a single 10.2mm dynamic driver dedicated to lows and mids, and a single balanced armature driver for the highs. That is a configuration that I tend to enjoy because it allows the IEMs to sound both a little warm while at the same time retaining detail. To that end, instrument separation and imaging are what I'd expect for dual driver IEMs at this price with this configuration. Same with response speed, nothing particularly sloppy either, nothing muddy. Personally, this is a response level that I like because it still responds naturally, at least to my ears, at least what I perceive as naturally. As for soundstage, it's not particularly open, but that really depends on what tuning filter and tips you use. The warmer combinations will sound more intimate than the brighter ones will. As for distortion, I never experienced any, but at very low volumes, you'll pretty much lose anything below mid bass, although that isn't that big of a deal, at least not for me. Fine for spoken content, not so much for some music. Speaking of bass, one thing I've learned is that I much prefer dynamic drivers for bass because I can feel them. That physicality is super important to me, and these can handle it pretty well for the category. The Hidizs product page calls it thunderous, and while I don't agree with that assessment, it does have a great bass extension that goes well into the sub bass with no real roll off. 3 good examples from my music list for this are Billie Eilish's Bad Guy, the Chloe Chua performance of the Butterfly Lovers Concerto, and Atemporal by Lucretia Dalt. All of those have a physical bass element near the start of the piece that the audio gear either hits or it doesn't. And in the case of the MS2 Pro, it does. If you're like me and you want to feel the bass, not just hear it, these do deliver. Moving on to the mids and treble, this is definitely impacted by the filter and the ear tips that you use. The black filter will give you a warmer tone that some people may call more musical, although the point is that the timbre will be more relaxed. Where this really shows up is with voices. The black filter gives you more of a forward quality that will sound more like a stage performance than someone singing in front of you without the microphone. With the red and white filters, you're going to get more of a clean sound. That isn't because you're losing any of the mids really, but because you're gaining more treble. So the timbre here will generally sound more accurate and real, and the sound will sound a little bit more open. The only issue that I found with voices was when I used these as monitors for my microphone, which might impact you if you use these for either streaming or gaming or work. These reveal everything, no matter which filter you have on, to a distracting level, so be sure to turn down the volume some. Now, normally I have a section in my reviews for what music genres I feel sound best with a particular audio product, but this is hard with the MS2 Pro. Still, here's how I'd break it down. For classical, I found the white tuning filters to sound the most natural in their timbre, though I think the red is fine. For indie, folk, maybe 70s soft rock, or just 70s rock in general, and just anything in that general realm. If you just happen to like your tunes to be very relaxed, for example, use the black filter. In fact, combine the black filter with the narrow bore ear tips for the most bass focused sound. But if you just want an all-rounder that sounds good with everything, the red filter would be my choice, using the wide bore tips if you want a bit of extra energy, or the narrow bore tips if you want something a little more relaxed. With all that said, let me be blunt. I like these. Are there better IEMs than the MS2 Pro at the $99 price? Arguably, yeah. However, what those don't give you is the tuning flexibility that you get with the MS2 Pro. A lot of people don't use equalizer. They just buy an IEM, they stick it in their ears and decide whether they like it or not. I do think that most people will pick one tuning and stick with it for the long haul. That's fine, but I also think there's a large percentage of people, especially if you're in the audio hobby, who will be switching these out regularly, either to see what goes well with what music, or because they just don't know yet what kind of sound signature they like, or because they just like novelty. Novelty is good. I'm a fan of novelty. But what about you? Are you a one tuning type of person, or do you like to switch around depending on what you're listening to? Let me know in the comments and let me know what combinations you like. And if you have the time, check out this short review over here that I made for the Hidizs SD2 dongle DAC, which might just be the perfect pairing to the MS2 Pro. With that, take care.